Hello, BookTube. Sorry once again for the backlighting on the hair. There's no real way to avoid it. I could, I guess, try to put that up a little higher, but it doesn't really help. It's just the wrong time of day to be filming, that's all. It's just that my Bookish days, I don't know what your Bookish days momentums are like, but I have extremely bookish days, and they tend to grow in momentum the longer in the day they go. So I end up doing all sorts of things in the early part of the day when that would be perfect. If I could film my 5 videos a day, 4 videos a day, or whatever, I honestly don't know how booktubers get away. I don't know how they restrain themselves from doing multiple videos a day. I don't know how you do it. I asked that to a friend just the other day, and she said, well, you have to keep in mind that although everybody on BookTube leads bookish lives, you lead a more intensely bookish lives than a lot of people do. You have books coming in, you have lots of access to books, you're involved in the world of books in a little more daily fashion than a lot of people are. You have more time to read. I don't know how it is, but the booktubers who make 1 video every month, 2 videos a month, I don't know how. I don't know how that happens. Anyway, I've got more books to show you. I've shown you about 100 books in the videos today. This will be the last. I think this will be the last. I went to the Brattle today, the Brattle bookshop here in Boston. Those of you who may not be familiar with it, if you're new to this channel, welcome, first of all. The lighting doesn't get much better. It's a used bookstore in downtown Boston, and it's great. It's a great place. Not only is it a great used bookstore, but it has great turnover. So when you go there, you're going to see new things. Even if you go pretty much every day, you're going to see something new. And I know that for a fact because once upon a time, there have been years in my life where I went to the Brattle almost every day. For instance, for a long time, I worked in a bookstore literally down the street from the Brattle. So I went there at my lunch every day. Unless I had something else to do at lunch, I went every day. And also, a little bit sadder reason, but nevertheless, in my life, in the periods of my life where I have had, I always have dogs, at least one. Right now I have one. Usually I have more than one. And in periods of my life when my dogs are very old and they mostly sleep and they're starting to get a little uncomfortable, in other words, they're starting to get sick in ways that no vet can fix, that requires an extra, those of you who've been through it will know, it requires an extra amount of stuff from inside you. It takes more out of you to be there for your dog, to help them through that time, especially since you know there's no other end to it. You're going into it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and then it's going to go from really sick and frail and falling to dying. And there's no end to that either. You know how the whole story ends. You just have to be there and you have to do it right. It's the last duty that you have to do for your friends. And over the years, I've been going to the Brattle forever, just forever. And over the years, when I have been in that position where I had old, dying, frail dogs, the thing about it is you can't be with them all the time or you'll just exhaust yourself. You'll wear yourself out and then you won't be there when they need you. So I always used to make sure to get away for a couple of hours every day. I would take them out, I would settle them, I would see to their needs, and then when I was sure that they were comfortable and asleep, I would leave for just long enough so that they wouldn't notice. And then I would come back before they could miss me and become alarmed. And just recently, for instance, I had my girls. I had my 2 previous dogs before Frida, and that was about a year, about a solid year, where they were in that period where where it was okay to leave them as long as I wasn't gone for long, and it was kind of psychically necessary for me to leave them. So I did, and that was another case where I was at the Brattle every day. And I don't do that anymore. I love Frida's company, and I also have a huge amount of work to do. So I don't go to the Brattle as often now as I used to, and I went today. And I vlogged. We'll see if that comes out. We'll see if that works. And I also got a stack of books, and I wanted to show them to you. And we'll start with science fiction. I found 2. I gather from Twitter that the Brattle recently had a large influx of science fiction mass market paperbacks. Fantastic. I saw a lot of them out in the bargain section. The Brattle it's a used bookstore. Then the lot next door is bargain books, $1, $3, and $5 on carts, just outside in the open air. And I saw a lot of such books there, and I had to resist getting a lot of them just for nostalgia's sake. I've read all of those mass market paperbacks of science fiction. Mark Richardson and I are the ones who read all of those mass market paperbacks. But a lot of them, it was fun to see them again, but it would be a bad idea to just hoover them up, because I'm not going to go back to them. I'm trying to make my library a place of books that I use, that I love, that I actively consult and reread. So I don't want anything there just for heritage's sake. But I did find two. They were $1 a piece, so I grabbed them. And I definitely want at least one of them. I might want both of them. The first one is by Alan Dean Foster, an endlessly prolific writer who does movie adaptations, he does TV adaptations, he does short stories, he does lots of novels. He did a popular series, the Flinks and Pip series about a boy and his pet dragon. He's done standalone novels like Nor Crystal Tears, and then 50 years later, Kiran Yaga, and they're of equal quality. They're just really, really good. And he did 2 collections of short stories 50 years ago that I really liked, and I always told myself in the back of my mind that if I saw them, the mass markets of them, I would get them. I only saw one today. It's this. It's With Friends Like These. And the follow-up volume is, of course, Who Needs Enemies? And I didn't see that one today. Probably whoever dumped all of these science fiction mass markets dumped them both. But I didn't see it today. I looked around. But I grabbed this. It's been forever since I reread these. It's going to be wonderful to rediscover them. And then the next one was actually, it's another mass market, and it was actually kind of inspired by my latest library tour. I've been touring my library here in this room, and the top shelf of the little hutch over on the other side of the room is all mass market paperbacks, including lots of mass market science fiction. And I was coming across a lot of Gordon Dixon, who wrote a series of books called the Dorsai series. He eventually called it something else, having to do with the reincarnation of a heroic archetype, the child saga, and it was the more meta he got on it, the more grotesque and bloated it got. But in its original novels, probably the first 6 novels and short stories, the Dorsai novels were really good military science fiction. And when I was looking at those books on that library tour, I was seeing The Spirit of Dorsai, Lost Dorsai, Soldier Ask Not, things like that. But I wasn't seeing this, Dorsai itself. And when I saw this classic redone cover, I grabbed it. I also saw, when I was there, a mass market of Kenneth Flint's novel, A Storm Upon Ulster, with its previous mass market cover. In that library tour, I was showing you the new mass market, not the new, this Storm Upon Ulster is not in print, but I was showing you the second mass market cover illustration, and I saw the first one. There, I took a picture, I'll put it on Instagram, which you should all follow me on Instagram, because it's a ton of fun. I post on there all the time. It's either books or Frida, usually nothing else, but this is a Dorsai standalone novel, and it's quite good. You'll notice that there's a bit of orthographical hijinks with these 2 books. One ends with an ellipses, and one ends with an exclamation point. I didn't get any science fiction today that ends just normally. But those are 2 science fiction classics that I know I want. So I was happy to see them. This next one is also a mass market, but it's an ex-library book. It's a hardcover, and it is, let's see here, it is by Joseph Allen. It's from 1938, and it is Tales and Trails of Martha's Vineyard. And this is an old library edition. Let me see if I can get the frontispiece for you. Yeah, there you go. That is what it looks like. And this is just a little 1938 book about Martha's Vineyard, which is, again, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar, it's an island off the coast of Massachusetts. And it has forever been a destination. It has an incredible flavor of its own, a long folkloric history, and also it's now a popular destination resort. The summertime population of the vineyard booms. It's many thousands of times greater than the wintertime population of the vineyard. And this is just old stories that the author found there, from vineyard whaling, vineyard captains, the various vineyard towns. And because this is from 1938, it also has an element that its author didn't know it would ever have, which is that now this book is also historical. This is also a trip down memory lane, even considering, because when the author when he looks at the history of the vineyard, he does it in the context of the present day in the 1930s, and that was 100 years ago. So, and the Martha's Vineyard also has one other distinction, book 2, just in case you're interested. The Martha's Vineyard Gazette, a grand old venerable newspaper on the vineyard, an old-style broadsheet newspaper, has me as a book reviewer. so you have that too. I got the latest Vineyard Gazette in the mail just the other day, and it had a review of mine. My editor there keeps me well supplied with books. It's a lot of fun to do. It's an amazing experience to know that my reviews are going to show up in the Vineyard Gazette during the summer when hundreds of thousands of people are going to see it, because I was once one of those people. In the summer, in the autumn, even in the winter. I was one of those people. When you're on the island, you read the Gazette, you read the Vineyard Gazette, and the idea that I am in it now is just amazing. So of course I would hoover up Martha's Vineyard books anyway, but I have an extra personal reason to do that. This is going to be great fun. I don't think I've ever read this one. It's going to be great fun to read it again. Then this next one is one, I think all the rest of these are books that I have read before, and this is one that I just like. I get it, I give it away, I get it, I give it away, but I found it again. This is by Edward Seidensticker, and this is Genji Days. And this is his diary of his life while he was working on his epic translation of Murasaki Shikibu's The Tale of Genji. So it's a book about a book, but it's also something about the way this guy writes. I've read his journals on Tokyo, I've read his... I just like the way he writes. I like spending time with him on the written page. And I love this book. Graceful and also an amazingly interesting insight into one working writer's life. He wasn't just translating Genji. He was writing papers, he was writing reviews, and he kept a diary the whole time and decided to make a book out of it. It's a lovely book. And it also, I mean, it's not only this, but throughout you get amazing insights into an expert going into detail about how to translate something like Genji. So I'm very happy to have it again. I will almost certainly reread it, and then it will go in the little book room. It's a keeper of a book if I can just manage to keep it. This next one is a big fat biography. In fact, the next three that we'll finish out with big fat biographies. This is by Gene Edward Smith, who I love. I think this biographer does great work. And I had this book in a finished hardcover. I don't think I have it anymore. I don't think we encountered it in my biography tour, but I really did like it. It was part of a little boom on the subject, and I think it was my favorite one. This is Eisenhower in War and Peace by Gene Edward Smith. This is just a big biography of Dwight Eisenhower. And it's the Dwight Eisenhower biography that I actually want to have. So I'm glad that I found it, even if it's in trade paperback. I don't mind if it's in trade paperback. So it was $1, so I'll grab it and I'll put it on the biography shelf. The goal here, of course, with Brattle books is always to try and find things that you're not going to just cycle through and get rid of again. And with biographies, big fat biographies, it's more likely to be true that I'm doing that than if I get a novel, for instance. This next one's something we've seen on this channel before. I found a copy at the Brattle, and I gave it away to one of you. Somebody asked for it almost immediately. I sent it out right immediately. This isn't in as good a shape as the copy that I originally found, but that's okay. I love it. I think it's fantastic. This is Peter Baker's book, Days of Fire. This is Bush and Cheney inside the White House. A big and detailed insider account of the Bush years. There are many of those, and there'll be many more. There's one coming out in 2020 that looks fairly ambitious, but this is my favorite so far, and unless you include Bob Woodward's books. But with Bob Woodward, I always wonder about him, and I didn't. There are a lot of times when I'm reading a Woodward book when I get to an anecdote and I think that seems a little too good to be true. And unfortunately, I've always thought that about Woodward. I love his work. I read it. I'm faithfully there when a new book of his appears. But I'm also a longtime veteran reader and also a longtime veteran critic. And when I get to an interview and a detail in a book of nonfiction, and all of my instincts say that seems too good to be true, I'm not always willing to say, well, it seems too good to be true, but it must be true because of Woodward's reputation. Whereas I didn't get anything like the feel of that here. So I just got another copy of this. I won't reread it right away because I reread it the last time I showed you a copy of this. Instead, I'll just put it on the shelf, on the history shelf. And then the last one is another big fat biography. This one I got when it originally came out 20 years ago and loved it. But I was working at a bookstore. I was working in a bookstore. I wasn't writing reviews in 2001. I wasn't doing it anywhere. I didn't have my own online space. There was no online space. I didn't in any way anticipate back then that I would come back into the world of book reviewing, much less that the internet would happen and that I would have a profusion of venues. That never occurred to me. This is by James McDermott, and this is Martin Frobisher. This is a big, fat biography of one of Queen Elizabeth I's primary privateers, one of her primary pirates. Only it's much more than that. We saw in my library tour a little book called Elizabethan Sea Dogs. And when you're telling, swashbuckling tales of the Spanish Main, Frobisher's name will come up. He will be in those top 4 names of Elizabethan Sea Dogs. But this is much more than that. This biography goes into lots and lots previously unwritten details about his life at sea and on land, or in England and far, far away from England. I loved it when it first came out. I thought it gave us just about the most three-dimensional human portrait of Martin Frobisher that we're ever going to get. And I got rid of it in a move somewhere, maybe in a fire or whatever. So when I saw it at the Brattle today for $1, I grabbed it. So this will go, again, with the Eisenhower book, this will just go on the biography shelf. Excuse me, good Lord. The Eisenhower book and the Frobisher book will go on the biography shelf. The Martha's Vineyard book and the Genji Days book will go in the little book room, and the science fiction books will go with the science fiction mass market paperback. So I'm hoping that I don't cycle through any of these things. So there you go. We have Martin Frobisher. We have Days of Fire, Cheney and Bush in the White House. We have Eisenhower in War and Peace. We have Genji Days by Seidenstecker. We have Tales and Trails of Martha's Vineyard from 1930s. We have Dorsai with an exclamation point by Gordon Dixon. And we have With Friends Like These by Alan Dean Foster. A collection of his science fiction short stories. Somewhere down the line, I'm sure, we will get a gigantic volume of collected the complete short stories of Alan Dean Foster. But I don't think I would like that book as much as I like one with this old cover, because I loved this when it first came out. When was that? I read the daylights out of this when it first came out. In 1977. Good Lord. Good Lord. So there you go. That was my trip to the Brattle. I had a wonderful time. Really ought to do it more often, but the stars don't often align as often as they once did. So once again, I will try to list all these books down below, and if I have reviews of any of them, I'll try to remember to link to those. But in the meantime, I will wrap this up for now, but I will be back. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.